Okay.
So we're broadcasting.
Yeah, we'll wing it. Our faithful followers are not well, I'm sure they're there. Just I think they're kind of used to us kind of figuring it out as we go along. I don't think we've had a lot of preset topics lately, except for maybe one.
Should probably turn that off.
You know, I will say that I am really enjoying HBO Max.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Because of all the Sesame Street.
Oh yeah, I'm just attacking the Sesame Street. It kind of feels well. I think it's like a mix of like Cinemax and HBO, but the series that they have on here in the collection of things are pretty good. I think I'm watching more of HBO Max than anything else right now, and I'm only watching it because I get it for free because of my phone contract. So once the Snyder cut comes out, I'll watch it and report because that's the only reason why I was excited about it to begin with. I don't know. I think it's still a couple months away.
Isn't it like next week? I thought it was like next week.
You know what? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know.
I thought I knew, but I don't. It was kind of cool. They have all the old series of Scooby-Doo, and I thought it was a while away. They have the entire series of Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, and Jetsons on there, so I've been introducing my kids to a couple of those episodes. And it's funny watching things like the Jetsons and seeing some like the archaic values and stuff that are still, you know, you figure when it came out, I think it's probably what, the late 60s, maybe early 70s. Yeah, and inviting the boss over for dinner and just the inherent bigotry in some of the stuff is really kind of funny. And having a pause every now and then, and, you know, to tell my kids like, okay, it's not like that anymore. We don't say things like that. Or, my wife was having I'm not even sure why, but having my daughter watch Bewitched with her, something they were watching, and in some cases, and sometimes it seems like really progressive for like the mid to late 60s, and other times it's like, okay, this is not okay, you know. It's kind of funny watching some of those old shows.
I mean, even watching The Office right now, like a lot of that show does not hold up to the scrutiny of modern time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The show is only what, 8-9 years old?
Yeah.
So we've come that far in that time?
Yeah.
I've never watched The Office.
Well, look at all the episodes of 30 Rock that they're pulling. I mean, It's not just... Yeah.
They're actually
The Office had an episode of a guy in blackface, but he was emulating a character in European like Christmas culture who wears blackface. His name is called Zwart Peter, which is Black Peter, who like accompanies Santa Claus, and I'm wondering how long that's going to stick around.
We talked about something similar on an episode a while ago about changing old media or something. I don't remember the exact topic, but we covered a little bit of it before. But it seems like we're in a whole new ballpark with it now. I heard on a podcast this morning that the new Looney Tunes episodes that are on HBO Max, Elmer Fudd is no longer allowed to have a shotgun.
Oh yeah. I heard that too.
Yeah, he has like a scythe and a dynamite that he uses. It just seems funny that you substitute one act of violence for another that appears to be way worse. It's funny. Mm-hmm. I remember years ago, I think the first pass of a lot of this had to do with smoking, where cigarettes and people smoking were being digitally removed. Like that was the big scandal and now we're, I guess, on the next phase of that.
Yeah, when I worked at Disney, that was the big push, is to go back and digitally alter all of the footage in every picture of Walt Disney so that you didn't see a cigarette in his hand. So it's hard nowadays to find like a video footage or a picture of Walt Disney with a cigarette in his hand, because Disney works so hard to like remove that from everything that they could.
It's getting annoying. I mean, it was annoying even when it first started, but
What is getting annoying specifically? Like having to remove everything?
no, almost like the revisionism a little bit. And I know that there's potentially decent arguments for doing it, but it feels like scrubbing, texture out of what once was. Not that we have to parade these things around or celebrate them, but I think they're very interesting and semi-important markers of time.
Yeah, I was watching was it Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, and he made a point about remembering and learning from history and celebrating it are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think for things to represent, like if you watch Mad Men, like I know we talked about that here on the show, like they talk like that. They had cigarette breaks at work. They all, that stuff existed. That show also kind of glorifies it, but like to take away a picture of Walt Disney smoking, like you're not glorifying it. That's what that guy did. You don't need to put up a statue of him with a cigarette in his hand. Like it was something that existed in his life. That is probably not the thing that you should celebrate about the person. If you want to put a statue about that,
and a lot of other people at that time died of.
Right, I was gonna say lung cancer,
prematurely or otherwise. So,
with all the warnings, specifically about cigarettes, the other cases are a whole different conversation. But cigarette advertisements aren't as prevalent around anymore. I don't know if they exist where you guys are, but cigarette vending machines used to be all over the place. I haven't seen one in probably almost 20 years. I don't see commercials with it anymore. Right. So I don't think that that's as much of a threat, although, I know this was happening at least, 15, 20 years ago right now anyways. So I don't know if seeing somebody smoking on TV has the same effect, because they're not being hit from all the different directions of that influence the same way.
It's interesting. I don't know where Samantha got this idea, but in the last year, something got brought up, like a family member of mine or an acquaintance or somebody like smoked, and somehow she like got the idea from pop culture and media that anybody that smoked was a bad guy, like a villain, like a I don't know, like an enemy or
it's like a typecast. It's cool.
A typecast, like like the Dastardly,
Yeah.
What was his name? Dick Dastardly in
Scoop.
Hanna-Barbera. Yeah. And not that she's ever seen that, and I'm wondering what media she watched to give her that impression. But yeah, we had to sit her down and tell her that some people do that. Doesn't mean they're a bad person necessarily. It's just something that they feel compelled to do, and that that causes that feeling within the person, and it's hard to break that. And so yeah, she sort of had that mental stereotype for a while. I don't know if she still does. She probably does. She also kind of freaks out sometimes when she sees like German Shepherds for some reason, and like kind of police dogs.
For that same reason?
Well, yeah, she just thinks that bad guy's nearby, because I don't know what she's seen, but one time we were coming, I think I might have mentioned this before, but we were leaving the grocery store, and there was a dog that ran across, like, from the parking lot towards us, like, at a diagonal, because there's a pet store to the left of us, like, from where the grocery store exit was. And you see the dog, and someone's running across the, parking lot to catch the dog. It's like it got loose from a leash out of the car. And she's like, "Oh, we gotta go. I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? What's wrong?" "Oh, we gotta go. we just have to go. I'm like, all right, we're gonna stop right here and like analyze this for a second. Like, what's wrong? What's happening?
Yeah.
And she basically thought that it was like a police dog that was like released to go after a bad guy. I don't know where she saw this from, like sick 'em, and like the dog's in pursuit. Not, she didn't understand that, oh, there's a pet store here and this is something. And I was trying to like intercept the dog and she was like, no, leave the dog alone. No, we got to go. Like there's bad guys around or something. And she sort of got that correlation of police canine unit going after a baddie. And she never really was like, she's kind of freaked out, like stranger dangery kind of stuff. Not that we've ever, over hyped that. We kind of would just say, what do we used to call them? We had a phrase. I can't remember off the top of my head. Catherine to remind me, but it was like not squirrely people, but something like that. Like where I don't remember. I'll have to look it up. Don't quote me on that. But basically, it's interesting where kids get these perceptions from other media that is oblivious to us, either because we've seen it for so long we don't notice it anymore, or they've just kind of gleaned it from their own little perspective. It's kind of interesting.
My kids had a bunch of things like that too when they were a little bit younger. I actually don't remember the examples, but very similar to what you were talking about, Wes. And I don't know if this is my adult brain thinking, but it seems like kids drink the Kool-Aid a lot easier right now when they're told something. I don't know if you guys share that sentiment or not, but it kind of feels that way. My kids seem hypersensitive about things that I don't think that we would have reacted the same way when we were kids. I know times are different, but definitely more sensitive to some of those different behaviors.
Like what exactly?
Anything that seems a little bit different, strange, like smoking, for instance. Anything that we consider a little bit more rare now, but it's it was more commonplace when we were younger. The smoking is just the one that comes to mind. I can't think of any other examples at this moment, though.
I remember
my neighbor smokes, and like he smokes on his porch.
Yeah.
And the kids like see Mr. Robert smoking, but they know what it is, and I tell them about it. I'm like, well, people are allowed to, and he made that choice. I was like, I think it's gross. I was like, but he's a grown man and he can do what he wants.
I kind of like that. I like that perception.
No,
a tricky
my
person.
My daughter has
That's
no
what I was thinking
about speaking up. Smoking's bad for you, don't you know that? I'm sure they do.
That was the word I was searching for. A tricky person, not a stranger, because a lot of people say that you shouldn't like use the word stranger because it makes it scarier. So they just like a person that is trying to trick you basically into getting in a car or proposing some situation that is to trick a kid. So that's there's like articles on it. Yeah.
I've never heard that distinction.
Yeah, me neither.
Me either.
Well, my son had back when we had like the Fortnite conversation about like, was it worth doing? Was it good? Was it whatever? We downloaded it and we played it, and he doesn't like confrontation, and he doesn't like blood or like gore or which is good. Like he's turned off by violence, and so he never really played it again. He didn't really care. And so his friends came over for a big barbecue thing we had, and they're like, "Oh man, you got to get Fortnite. Like Fortnite's the coolest game. We've been playing it a whole lot." And so he automatically comes to me. He's like, "Dad, can we download Fortnite again?" Because he deleted it to make room for another game, and I ignored him. He asked me again. He started getting annoying because they were there, and I ignored him. And I sat him down the other day, and I'm like, "Why do you want Fortnite? Like, I know that game bothers you." He's like, "It doesn't bother me." And I'm like, and I eventually just kind of not broke him down, but I convinced him that like to open up enough to me and go, "Yeah, it does bother me." I'm like, "I know it. I know I see it in you. So why do you want to do that?" And I'm like, man, this is the first peer pressure conversation I've had to have with he's almost 10. In a couple weeks he'll be 10. And so we talked about, like, if you're uncomfortable in a situation that you may have never been presented with, Like, does it make you better? Because you could just be scared about something. Or does it make you like the other person? Does it make you be better, or does it make you become them? And I talked about smoking. And he was like, ugh. And the first time I smoked, because my friends were smoking, I had the very stereotypical, like, come on, man, just do it. He's like, yuck, that's gross. I'm never doing that. I'm like, yes, you will. You'll be in that situation. I'm like, and you're going to be in that situation with alcohol. He's like, what? No. I'm like, yes, you will. And so I was like, this is our standard, right? I was like, so if you find yourself and you're uncomfortable, does this make you better? Or does this make you like that person? And that should be your metric to decide whether to do it or whether not to do it. Just because being uncomfortable, being scary, sometimes you got to push yourself to do something for your own benefit. And I think he really took it to heart. And it was really, really weird for me. Like, I was completely unprepared, but it all just kind of worked. And it's like cigarettes and things that are vices and getting in cars with other people. Like, I think that's the thing. And as far as that situation, I'm sure it may evolve over time, but like, does this make you a better human being? Or does this make you become that person who's trying to get you to do a thing? Like, that's peer pressure. So I don't know if you guys have had to have that conversation.
Not yet.
Not yet.
My son's pretty good with it. He kind of avoids peer pressure pretty easily. In fact, it's funny you brought up Fortnite. I started playing it, and I have to openly state kind of a little bit of a retraction. It's kind of fun. I like it. I'm not going to play a whole lot of it. What's funny is my son got mad at me for playing it. He goes, why are you playing Fortnite? It's a horrible game. The one that I have to worry about a little bit more with peer pressure is my daughter, mainly because of her friends. And I could kind of see that peer pressure thing is going to happen pretty quickly over the next 2 years. And I haven't had to have a whole lot of conversations with her about it yet, but just kind of trying to emphasize her to be her own person, because she is pretty good of knowing right from wrong. But I'm also worried about her being a little bit of a follower. So, I'll report back in about a year or two.
Yeah. My 4-year-old daughter, she's the one that would like happily get into a car with a stranger. And we have to tell her, excuse me. We have to tell her all the time that, like, you don't know that person. Like, you can go say hi, go introduce yourself, but keep a distance from people. Because she will openly just walk up and like try to hug somebody or hold her hand, or like, she's just very affectionate and loving, and like, you need to show a little bit of restraint, please. Because if she does get abducted, I hope that she is destructive enough to make them want to return her to me. Like, we'll just get worn out after a certain time period and want to give her back.
We just abducted the Tasmanian devil. What the heck?
Yep. I remember there's a goofy golfing place whenever we go home to Florida that the kids love going to, that I loved going to when I was 4 and above. And in the middle of the little goofy golfing place, they have like a little candy stand. They still have a slush puppy machine. And up till last year when we went, they still sold candy cigarettes. It's just like, it's old, and they may still be the ones when I was in elementary school.
Right.
But like, they still sold them, and I thought it was hilarious. And they were still $0.25. And I remember taking them out of the little thing and like tapping them on the thing, and everybody walk around with their cool candy cigarette because you're cool.
Or then you puff out the little dust. Yeah.
Yep.
And you have the Big League Chew too. That's emulating, chewing tobacco. That's still around.
My favorite candy, grape Big League Chew. A Sabasco.
I never made the connection to it until I was almost, probably in my teens. I'm like, oh, that's what that was supposed to be like.
Right, right.
Have you ever actually tried Red Man, like chewing tobacco like that?
No, I haven't.
So it's like, have you ever smoked a cigar?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine taking a cigar and like getting it really wet, like wet to the point where you're like, ew. Like you dropped it in a puddle for a long time and you came back for a while and then you picked it up and stuck it in your mouth.
Oh my God.
And you like, because you have this thing in your mouth, you salivate super heavy. And that's why homeboys that dip have a bottle, and they spit into this bottle. It's just like to get rid of the excess saliva. And I thought that you were spitting out like pieces of it that went bad, like a sunflower seed type mentality. like, oh, this little piece of tobacco must be losing its flavor, so you just like you spit it out. And so I didn't think that you just had to like spit all of your spit, and I swallowed a big gulp. And man, my stomach hurt so bad. It tasted so disgusting. And I just like, bleh, got rid of that big nasty wad of gross.
Have you guys ever seen the movie The Sandlot?
Of course, yeah.
I had my son watch that, and there's a scene with the kids in the chewing tobacco, and they all get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I paused the movie and made a point to talk to my son about it. I don't think he'll ever try it. I'll just remind him about the movie.
If they can watch it again, since it's not on Disney Plus.
It's true. Well, we own it anyways.
That's true. We need to get that.
Well, my wife and I like had a glass of wine one night, and my son was asking us about it, and we went on with the evening, and Tiff was like, he asked me for some wine one day. He asked if he could try it. I'm like, so let him try it. And she goes, oh, no, you can't let him try. I'm like, let him try it, because then he'll think it's disgusting, and he'll never want to try it again.
Yep.
I'm like, it's
imprinted.
Yeah, like I want that very first association to most vices are bad. So if it's just a curiosity rather than a peer pressure, when a peer pressure wants to make you fake your reaction rather than you have a genuine, like, disgusted reaction, like, get it out of the way.
Now, there's a possible downside to that, too, because I did that with my kids, and I don't remember if it was beer or wine, but my daughter went, mmm.
I did
okay.
not.
No more. And we were not expecting that.
I remember
Sangria
the first time I had
No,
beer.
it wasn't sangria.
And I was like, ugh, like, this is gross. I think I had like a Miller Lite or some American piss water nastiness anyway, but like I had it, I'm like, this is gross.
Yep.
Why do people glorify this? And I was in such a
time.
Yeah, like a huge group of people, so you just kind of like you fake it until you like it. Like, okay, yeah, hooray, beer. But if I was by myself and somebody offered me a beer, I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I don't like it. It tastes bad. No, thank you. And the first time I tried wine, I was 12 or so. And my aunt was a big lush anyway, and she let me try it, and I'm like, that tastes like disgusting cough syrup. Why would you enjoy that? And she laughed at me. And so from then on, like, I didn't have wine again until I was like an adult. And even then, I'm like, okay, maybe. And then I'm like, not really. And then it's like mushrooms. Like, you're the first caveman to try mushrooms. Like, eventually you'll weave down through the generations to find one that is like, this is pretty good.
Not deadly.
Yeah. Like, I kind of like this one. And then you develop a taste for it. But, like, I think a lot of things you really have to put in a lot of effort to enjoy a vice. And I never really understood it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like the most boring person in the Navy because I didn't drink or smoke. So I think I upset a lot of people and I actually won a lot of money because over the time, like, people that were in the same command like as me, they would, like my buddy that knew me really well, he was like, yeah, he won't drink. I bet you $20 you can't make him drink by the night's end or whatever. And then he would like split the money with me, and it was just silly stuff like that. But I was like kind of the opposite of the stereotype of getting drunk and going to a port and rabble-rousing, causing problems. And
well, that's because you had video games.
True. That, yeah. My buddy and I bring that up a lot when we think fondly about the times in the Navy. Like, we realize that StarCraft pretty much saved us from getting into a lot of trouble because we were able to play it against each other in our barracks while other people were just blowing their entire paycheck, in one night. But yeah, I never really had an interest. I think about this kind of often. I think it was maybe I was like 10 or 11, and I remember thinking, like, I never want to do this, like smoking. I never want to drink, and I haven't since.
I commend you for your conviction.
Yeah,
because I had a lot of family members and stuff that smoked. Like, my grandmother smoked and my mom smoked that I live with, and I mean, like, after a while, after you're emptying ashtrays for your grandmother and stuff like that, like, no, I'm good. And kids kind of look at you a certain way, like because you don't realize you stink with you on your shirt and stuff. It just absorbs in everything. You know, you just think that's the normal smell of things. You don't even notice it after a while. And I think in retrospect, I used to have like kind of like bags under my eyes, like dark areas, and I think I developed an allergy to tobacco being around it so much, and that's why like all my grade school pictures, it always looks like I'm super tired. I never was, but that was like apparently that's like a symptom of being allergic to that. Apparently,
It also be like smoke irritation too.
yeah. And then my dad. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Buzz.
I was saying my dad. I never lived with him, but he was sort of. He had the. I kind of had the relationship almost like an uncle. Like he would just visit every once in a while and like, oh hey buddy, you know. I knew he was my dad. I never grew. I wanted to have a father-son relationship with him, but he would often end up, like I guess disappointing me, because he would get into trouble or end up in jail or, you know, who knows what. He lived out of town, so he lived in Virginia Beach. I lived in Richmond. That was like about 2 hours away from each other. So my grandmother, who I lived with at the time, she ended up being very protective of me and like basically telling him not to come visit because that, like I remember several birthdays before I was like 10 that, you know, oh, your dad's coming for your birthday. Oh, cool. You know, I haven't seen him in like a year or whatever, you know, and then here comes the birthday and like all these other people come and go through the party, but I'm always like looking out the window, you know, waiting for him to pull up. He never did, you know, that kind of thing. So those sorts of experiences sort of cemented that thought of, you know, because he drank, not that it was violent or anything, just experiences of disappointment and stuff. Yeah. I was like, well, if that's what that causes, then I never want to have anything to do with it, you know. And there were other instances as well, but that's sort of the distilled version. I just never had a desire or interest.
I consider myself lucky in that effect too, because I lived with my grandparents for a couple of years and they were both smokers. Mm-hmm. My dad smoked for a long time, although I think he might have quit before I was born. You know, I grew up around people with a lot of different vices, and I think I'm fortunate that none of them really ever took hold with me. The smoking never appealed to me. I mean, I've tried a cigarette, but it's not something that I ever really cared to do with any sort of frequency. Drinking, I'm not opposed to it, but it's still pretty rare. I don't know. I guess I got lucky because some other people in my family, not so much.
Yeah, my mom's family were a bunch of alcoholics that would smoke and drink. And my uncle that works at the White House, like he had a cigar basement. And cigars were upscale, fancy. It wasn't a vice, it was a luxury. And when I was younger, like when I would go spend time with them, I'm like, yeah, I want to be cool because you got cool stuff. You got a big house and you know cool people. You smoke cigars. And so like there was a point where we went on a cruise and I tried to buy a bunch of cigars just because they were associated. It's like that same association, but just in the opposite direction. Like this, right. Cool people don't smoke cigarettes. Cool people smoke cigars and they have a thing of brandy and they sit in a cool chair because they're chill and they can afford to. And I remember like, this is gross. Like, this just tastes bad. Why am I trying to force myself to enjoy this? And then because that person had those really strong, like positive associations with those vices, I tried to adopt some of them and I was just constantly disgusted by them. And so that little card falling out of the house of cards was like, oh yeah, and your family life is not that great, and you kind of hate a lot of stuff, and it's all a facade. And like when I had a family and the things that I started to value more, I'm like, we don't have a lot in common. Like as this person that I eventually wanted to grow up and become. Mm-hmm. And so then it was just like, okay, I have no desire to do any of that stuff because it was all glorified in my head as a kid. But in reality, it was a huge letdown. Like all of it was just like, it was a fake. Like he was in huge amount of debt trying to live that cool lifestyle that I thought was so neat and lavish. And so all of these things became the opposite of success or opposite of like idealization in my head. And like smoking, I remember like people in my life and people in my town, I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida with a lot of I'll include myself in this. A lot of white trashy people. The countryest didn't give a carest, Confederate flag wavingest, people of Walmartist kind of people, and don't care. And I remember the people that were just like mean and angry were these like methed up looking people that were just smoking all the time. And so that association was just like, how are you so bad off or claim to be so bad off, but yet you can spend $10 or $8 on a pack of cigarettes.
Yep.
Without batting an eye.
Yep.
And so like that association to me was always negative. We're looking around to people going like, I don't want to be anything like you.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that like you're doing a lot. You're spending a whole bunch of money on. It stays in your clothes. It's a huge part of your personality. And so there's not very much else that is bleeding through.
Yeah.
Other than this association with cigarettes.
Yeah, there are a ton of people in my family that, because they smoke, I never went to visit them because I just knew that that's what I would be in for like 3 hours, and I just never, like I have such an adverse effect to it now that even, I mean, not just saying just now, but since growing up through it, that it just completely turns me off for even engaging with people that do that. Unfortunately, I mean, you know, some of the interactions beyond that, like it's sort of superficial seeming, but I don't know. It's just enough to not want to do it.
The Army made me get real like deep and scientific about it because they had smoke breaks every 45 minutes, and like I didn't smoke, and so then I would see people that like I know how much money you make. It is not a lot.
Yes.
I see how many cigarettes you smoke a day, and it is alarming.
Yep.
And so I remember I would go out to the smoke break and I would hang out with friends of mine, and I'm like, the idea that you had to be that something controlled you.
Yes, exactly.
I didn't drink coffee for the longest time till well after I got out of the military. I've never had an energy drink because I saw the people around me like could not function without a thing.
Yep.
And so then it became really intriguing to me that like I could see energy drinks like people are so just have to have that level of caffeine or B12 or whatever that they crash without. That's very apparent. But the cigarettes, I remember I would ask people, I'm like, do you feel different? Like, can you not have that cigarette? Is it something that is like a sneeze? Like, and they're like, no, it's a release. It was a break. It was a way to calm down. And there was all these factors that I didn't know because I had never developed a nicotine habit to have a nicotine withdrawal. But it was really interesting, like hearing a bunch of different people from a bunch of different backgrounds explain to me that they didn't have to have the cigarette. They wanted to have it. And I'm like, okay, so if you wanted to quit, you could
tell
quit
themselves
right now.
that, but sure.
They're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't need to smoke this thing. And then like every time people would get out of the helicopter, they would take their helmet off, they walk a distance away, and they would light up a cigarette. Like, it happened every single time, and I was like, "This is fascinating."
Fascinating.
It's funny you brought up the energy drink thing. I think there's a short period of time where I might have had like a slight addiction to energy drinks, especially like rock stars. But that was, maybe 10, 12 years ago. The first time I ever tried an energy drink, I'll never forget it. I got out of class from college, and there's a Red Bull car driving all around. They were first starting to promote their product. They had like a big can on the back of the car, and they gave me one to try. And I didn't know what the hell it was, so I tried it and I drank it. The damn thing gave me a buzz. I had never had anything like that before, and especially at that time, I wasn't drinking alcohol. I hadn't tried a lot of things that are normal, outside of like a normal regular like diet and stuff. So the way that thing hit my system gave me an actual buzz, as if it was alcohol, and it was just the amount of caffeine had that effect on my body. So when they said, Red Bull give you wings, I guess that's the sensation they were talking about.
I tried coffee when I started working at Lockheed because everybody else around me was doing it. My job was so boring, and I was sat in a little, tiny vault inside of a bunker, and I got sleepy. So I was like, go get a cup of coffee. And I used to get migraines really bad, and my migraines were triggered by caffeine. And so, like, if I stop drinking caffeine, I have a killer migraine that, like, I see the shooting stars. I want to throw up. I have to, like, lay on the floor of the bathroom where it's cold. It's terrible. So I either have to not drink coffee ever or have, like, a maintenance cup. And I don't like the idea now that I have to have a maintenance cup. Like, I want to drink coffee because I want to. And I don't want to be like the cigarette people. Like, I'm like, yeah, I could quit coffee anytime I want to. And I can because I have. But yeah, the first time I had a cup of coffee after, like, pretty much never drinking coffee was at Lockheed. And I remember my hands were shaking so bad. And I was filling out all this paperwork. And this girl was next to me trying to help me. And I'm like, I am going so fast right now and I cannot stop. I'm like, what is happening? And she's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I'm going so fast.
So fast.
Have you thought about switching to decaf? That we still get the cup of coffee in that ritual?
Sure, I guess. I mean, yeah, and there's times where I can, like, I know it's about 2 to 3 days. It's that caffeine withdrawal headache. And I'm like, oh, or Excedrin usually helps because Excedrin has caffeine. So it's like the methadone. If you don't feel like drinking coffee, you just have an Excedrin and it'll help you plateau a little bit before it eases you down. Yeah, that conversation with Deacon, like, about cigarettes and about alcohol, something like you're talking about, that he was just like, ugh, no. I'm like, okay, yeah, hooray, thank you. I don't know if you're saying that just because you think that's the right answer, which I don't think is the case. But I'm like, you're going to be presented with these things. Like, it's going to happen. It's not if. Like, it's inevitability. Even as disgusted as we are as a generation about cigarettes for the most part, and precipitously our kids would be even more disgusted maybe by cigarettes, or maybe they'll be more intrigued because the ebb and flow of generations. I don't know.
Of course, now it's all vaping.
Well, I was just gonna say, do you guys find it funny at all? And I know they're not exactly the same thing, but find it funny at all that cigarettes and all that is vilified, and then there's two other behaviors that are now normalized right now, vaping and then basically pot.
Although it's funny, now I'm seeing like Juul commercials for like quitting Juul, like you used to see quitting tobacco.
Interesting.
I'm about 98% positive that is a tobacco industry trying to demonize vaping because like a person or two were killed vaping. And so now they're like, oh my God, we need to create regulation that prevents people from vaping. But yet cigarettes are completely okay. But vaping is bad. Like, that logic doesn't pass any kind of test. I think, I don't know, it's a vice. It's another public vice. And just like cigarettes, like, whatever that vice happens to look like, if you have to have it, and if you need to leave here to go have to have it. But vaping, like, oh, you're just going to encloud yourself with a gigantic, massive cloud and puff it really huge. Like, it's very obvious that you're having your vice. This is not the pot, man. I remember during smoke breaks, I used to get annoyed with people that they would go take breaks so often. And I'm like, so you get a vice that you get to take a break and go do?
Yeah, I would take a non-smoke break and just walk away.
Like, I have a very private vice that I don't get the opportunity. If I did mine in public, I'd be arrested. But if you did yours in public, it's sanctioned. I'm like, this is messed up.
Yeah. You get an extra break because you're a weak person? What's up with that?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of replacing this, piece of electronics that we just hauled across the flight deck in like 103 degree weather with turtleneck and boots on, and now you're going to leave? Okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, it was always usually after the hardest thing, like physically you would have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whew, I'm done.
Smoke.
Yeah, take smoke break.
I need a cigarette.
Right.
You light a fire and burn something.
Well, ironically, when I was in high school, I was a fireman, and the very first house that I went into that was on fire was like such an intense experience. Had to wear SCBA equipment, oxygen or air bottle on your back, face mask to prevent you from inhaling smoke from this house. So we get in and we're doing all the stuff, and then once you are like relieved by another hose crew, there was a little EMS tent over there. Like paramedics and stuff, they would take your blood oxygen level, they would take your heart rate, and you would check your like the air level in your tank. And so while the other crew is fighting, you would swap out. I remember they were doing all this, and like 3 of the 5 guys that were on this hose with me are smoking. And I remember like, what sense does that make? Like, you could have just broke the seal on your mask. Like, then you'd be breathing in like a burning couch and a burning TV. But like, you're, and they were laughing at me because I was so freaked out that I was like sucking down a bunch of air. And they were laughing at me because I need to be able to control my breathing and calm down. And while they're like smoking a cigarette after leaving this house that's on fire, and I'm like, there's a lot of irony layered down here.
I didn't know that about you. I just learned something new.
Yeah.
I don't think you brought that one up before.
Really? Oh yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I had an internship period when I was in high school. Somebody on Instagram wrote me a message about this the other day. And I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So my internship was with a flight test squadron on the Air Force base my dad worked in. And so I went a couple times and I hung out with all these cool pilots, and they were telling me how I can become a pilot. And I'm like, this is dope. I am on my way. And then I had F-16 flight simulator time booked. I'm like, this is dope. And I was scheduled for September 12th, 2001. And September 11th hit, and all of that got shut down with the quickness. I was not allowed on base anymore, even though I should have been allowed on base. So I had to pick a new internship. And so my dad was a fireman, and it was all the rage at the time, and I thought it was cool, and I wanted to help people, so I became a fireman. And it was a cool experience. But again, most ironic, people put on breathing equipment so they don't breathe in smoke, and then they go out to a tent to have a cigarette.
Okay,
if anything, I want my... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, it's Donovan's turn to list all of his vices now.
Oh, is that what you guys were doing?
Did you have a peer pressure experience where people got you to try something you didn't want to try? First, we started talking about peer pressure, and then it eventually kind of worked into this.
Yeah.
So I was not... Make sure nobody can hear this. I was not smart when I was a kid. And I was picked on a lot. Like the stereotypical, geek kid with the glasses that, that push an AV cart and everybody throws spitballs at him, like you see in TV, that you kind of laugh out of like, oh, how humiliating like it is for this dorky kid and all the jocks pick it. That was me. I was picked on so much as a kid. I had like no self-esteem whatsoever. And so anytime, I didn't give in to peer pressure because there was not a lot of peer pressure to be had because I didn't have a lot of friends. But I did have a couple, and one of them had an older brother who started smoking weed, and I didn't understand. I thought weeds were weed. And so my experience smoking was that there was these big, long plants. I don't know what they were. They were weeds that grew in the field outside our backyard. And so I was playing, I was like breaking them into swords and, like hitting the back wall with them and like thrashing them around, doing this thing. It was like a big old weed. What weed?
Milkweed? Is it hollow on the inside?
Yeah, hollow in the inside. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And one
Those
day,
butterflies are mad at you for stealing their
monarchs.
milkweed.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
One day I was breaking it up. I'm like, man, this looks like those things that like the older kids smoke. I bet this is that weed that they were talking about. And so I lit it, and I was like, and
it's good.
I don't know if you've ever burned milkweed or been around it. It is awful. And if you can imagine like like
asphyxiation.
A hollow tube of milkweed. It was so bad.
It's hollow for a reason, right?
I was coughing up a lung, and my mom was like, "Are you smoking?" And I was like, "No, I'm not smoking." And I put it behind my back, and the thing was still on fire, and so it burned my hand. I'm like, "Holy crap!" And I got busted for smoking a weed, not smoking weed, but smoking a weed. My dad came home last night, and oh man, I was in so much trouble. I had to write a 3-page report on the dangers of smoking on a freaking top matrix printer. Yeah, and then I had to give a report to my parents on the dangers of smoking because I smoked a weed. So dumb, so dumb.
So it's stories like that I had to take a polygraph to get a security clearance, and they just asked me like really simple, dumb, benign questions. But I always wondered if somebody asked you, they're like, "Mr. Ewing, have you ever smoked weed?" And just like they're like, you would have such an internal battle, like, "Well, it wasn't weed, it was a weed, it was milkweed, which is not weed." And like, I wonder just what that polygraph would just be freaking out as you're trying to figure out. How do I answer this? Do I answer this yes or do I answer this no? Technically, it was a weed.
That's when you start. Well, this is
what happened was.
What happened?
What happened was.
If you ever have to, I'll talk you through it. I've lied on a polygraph and still beat it.
And then I had to get a 3-page report
On butterflies.
I think I still have that report. You know, that being said, I have never smoked a cigarette. Like, it cured me. Gosh, it was so bad, so gross.
I tried to smoke cigarettes when I was deployed. I saw the people that would like walk off the helicopter and like have a cigarette to calm them down. I'm like, I need something to calm me down. Like, this is terrible. And I'm like, because I was like, man, just have a cigarette and relax. And I tried. It was still disgusting. And they're like, well, you need baby cigarettes. You need to work up to this. And they're like, here's clove cigarettes. And they're like in a black wrapper. It was a little sweeter. And then I tried Black and Milds. And I was like, you guys, all of this is disgusting. Like, all this is terrible. And none of this is giving me like a little buzz. None of this is helping me relax. This is just gross. And my grandfather smoked a pipe. And I remember the pipe tobacco he had, like, it smelled good. I thought it smelled good as a kid, like, compared to cigarette smoke and stuff. I thought it smelled good. So I tried to smoke a pipe, and it was disgusting, too.
I can just imagine Josh.
Yeah, I have a picture of me sitting outside my little shipping container house, smoking a pipe. And even then, I felt like a pretentious dork. It still didn't help at all. And I remember Tiff found out that I was trying to start smoking. And she got so mad at me because all her family smoked, like her both, and she got angry. And I'm like, well, I mean, fine. I can't get mad because it didn't work anyway. So like I tried. So they had the locals had these things called beaties. They were like little tiny. I don't know if these are things that other people know about. Sean shaking his head, yes. So that's a thing. Okay, I didn't know what it was. So a beatie was like just a leaf, like rolled up, with like little tiny, like string around it, and they were sold in like a bundle. They're like, think of like what you would think in your head about joint size, like 2.5, maybe 3 inches, and we would get them from this local store. That these Iraqi guys man the store, and they would sell them for I think $5, and you get a little pack of beaties. And I remember I tried to smoke those, and it kind of gave like a little buzz, I guess. I had no idea what it was. Probably wasn't allowed to have it, but it was at the shop on base. So I mean, it was right there on the counter. We didn't like give them like the wink and the nudge for them to like get out the good stuff or whatever. So again, I have no idea what they were. People might be laughing at me for my idiocracy, but it barely, if anything, took the edge off. And I remember thinking the return on investment on this is horribly low. And there is really no benefit in my mind to doing this.
Now you what? Now you know. Now you understand why I quit Minecraft.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I fully do, and that's how I look at a lot of things. But especially with vices like that. I mean, I live in Kentucky where like people love bourbon. Everybody's got their favorite bourbon. Bourbon's expensive. It all pretty much tastes the same. No, you're just not getting the right kind. I've been to the distilleries. I've gotten the stuff straight from the place. I can't tell the difference. It's like wine. You can feign, like, yes, sir, I will have your finest aged single malt, blah, blah, blah. Just because people say those words, you may be able to tell the difference, but it's a vice that has become a luxury. And I still haven't made the transition as to why. And so I don't drink it. I don't drink it because it tastes alcohol-y, which sounds stupid, but like I don't get what the hype is about. Can't tell the difference between good and bad, young and old, and
Even a lot of blind taste tests, people have had trouble distinguishing between something that's considered expensive and cheap.
yeah. I remember I went to Murph, yeah, the Midwest Rip Rap Fest, that 3D printing festival, and I bought some people a bottle of bourbon because they were talking about it, and I was like, okay, you sure? I'm from Kentucky, I guess that's a thing. I'll bring it as a peace offering to all the people, and people are so excited about it. I'm like, yeah, I don't like it. I think it's gross, but enjoy. You do you.
So, what are you guys geeking out about? Other than bourbon and disgusting weed, yard weeds.
Milkweed. So dumb.
I'm geeking out about the Nether update for Minecraft. If no one's sick of me talking about Minecraft, it's a lot of fun. I've died a lot,
Yeah, me too.
but I'm learning as I die.
From the new piglins, whatever
Yes,
they call them.
hoglins and piglins,
The piglins, yeah.
dude. Yeah, they'll if you mine in front of them, they get mad and come attack you. And then once you die, they literally steal your armor and weapons and run off with them.
And they wear it.
And they wear it and laugh at you as they leave.
It's still kind of like an open game. There's no real narrative driving any of this now, is there?
No.
There's an underlying lore to the Minecraft world, which if you want to research into, there's cool stuff to be found in the lore of Minecraft, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, I think it's pretty neat. I like the new update. There was no reason really for me to go into the Nether before, and now it has different biomes and different little worlds, and I don't know. It's worth exploring. Just like it has explorative value.
So is the end different too now?
No.
I don't know.
No.
Never been. I
What
only
about
went that
the
one time with
other
the Black
end?
Hills.
The end? The...
Like where the Ender Dragon is?
Yeah. Is
That's the
that
same.
different at all? It's the same? Okay. So it's just the Nether that's revamped. Cool. Cool.
I'm geeking out about a documentary that's on Vice on YouTube. If I was looking for it right now, well, I think the title of it is "How 3D Printing is Changing the World," which kind of seems kind of late as far as 3D printing goes. One thing that I liked in it that they showed different, because I go through like all the usual things with resin printing, the FDM printing and all of that, but one newer thing they showed, because I was like kind of seeing where the industry and some of this might go, was using new computer modeling with a different kind of stress testing to figure out how to 3D print models that are stronger than what would normally be made. And what a lot of the computer models came up with is something that looks a lot more organic looking. And I thought that was kind of cool. And, looking at the possibility of future manufacturing, maybe not looking like it's all angles and simple curves, but maybe more something more organic, almost plant or bug like. And the amount of strength and the difference in strength in a piece that might take the same amount of time to print or the same amount of material being, a lot stronger than a traditionally printed piece. And, I just kind of, I always like reading about or learning about new methods of doing things to help take it further in the future. So that's what I'm geeking out about.
Yeah, the Autodesk Museum in San Francisco, that's not on the waterfront. They had a lot of examples of that generative design stuff, which is really neat.
Yeah, generative design is its own tab in Fusion. I think you have to pay to access it.
But CPU cycles or something, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
but you tell it, like, I need a piece that surrounds this piece and attaches to this piece, and it will try to draw the path of least resistance. And then it will make several variations based on how you plan to create that piece. Whether it's additive, it's subtractive, and it will change the geometry based on the loads that you tell it, based on the geometry that you give it as a constraint, and based on how you want to manufacture it. It's pretty cool. I haven't really had a need for it, but I can see where it could be pretty awesome.
Yep. That's it. All right, so we would like to hear from all of you. Everybody's been following the show, especially now that we've been going for 4 years now. And if you don't already know, we have a website, and that is one spot that you can go ahead and get a hold of us on the contact page, and you can contact us directly through there. And we get all those and respond to everything that we can. And on the homepage of the site, we have all of our past episodes, so you can listen right there in your browser on makinggeeks.com.
And if you have your own milkweed story that you want to share with us individually, love to hear them. You can contact Josh over at Josh_MakeStuff. Wes is at Geeksmithing. Sean is at Geek Builders. And I am over at Once Upon a Workbench.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/makinggeeks for helping us with their donations to our lowly little podcast. We definitely appreciate each and every one of you, including our top patrons, Mr. Jordan Rempel and Clinton and Square Splinter being the top as well. Thank you, guys.
And if you'd like to come hang out with us live, we live broadcast these podcasts on YouTube at Making Geeks Podcast every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the States. And then the podcast should be ready, free to deliver to you to your podcast player of choice over the weekend. And thanks for hanging out. And from all of us, all of you, we hope you have a fantastic week.
Later.
See you. Take care.